Hello and welcome to this video where I'm going to be talking about how learning Spanish acted as a springboard for me to then go on and learn other languages such as Portuguese, French and German. They say that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with just one step, so I'm hoping that maybe this video will inspire some people to take that first step. Hopefully you've already seen the part 1 video where I talk about how I went from being monolingual as a child, only speaking English, to being completely fluent in Spanish. If you haven't, I recommend you head over to my channel and check that one out first because it really lays the foundation for this part 2 video. 2019 is the year when I picked French back up. I did an intensive course at Marjan University in Plymouth with this lovely group of people, and actually within that group more than half of them were from Spain, so again speaking Spanish was really good for kind of clicking with them and getting to know them and making friends within that group. And as part of that, it was 12 weeks full-time learning French, and having learned Spanish made the process so much easier because I already had an understanding of the terminology, of what verbs are and nouns and adjectives and adjectival agreement and tenses, and also between French and Spanish there's not really much difference grammatically, and there's so many words that are similar, so many concepts that are similar when you're looking at the grammar, that it made the process so much easier. And as part of that, we spent 2 weeks staying with a host family. So I was with a host family where I just had to speak French. So I'd just done 5 weeks intense French, did my GCSE, was with this host family, going to a French language school, which was really useful. And again, being in the country, I learned so much in those 2 weeks because at the beginning, I'd wake up, I'd come downstairs, the lady would speak to me in French and I'd be like, struggling to get my words out. And by the end of those 2 weeks, at dinner time, I'd be talking to them for an hour on end and expressing myself, not perfectly, but getting by. So it's such a good experience, and again, really nice to have that experience to get to know people in another country, to see how they lived. So this is a group, this is one of my groups that I was in at the language school. There were people from Germany, there were people from Russia, Poland, a good international bunch. And being in that international environment, for me, it's the best thing about learning languages, the people you meet, the experiences you have, and the connections you make. And then later that same year, I went to Paris with my wife, and again, I'd been to Paris before, and I'd done all the touristic things, but going there, speaking the language was a completely different experience, and again, I was able to speak to people more. I felt a lot more confident being able to get directions instead of just wandering around lost, too afraid to go up to someone and speak English to them, and I was able to understand the street art and the things that people had written on walls and stuff, so it was just a much more enriching experience. And at this stage, my world map now had this extra kind of yellow part in it, so it wasn't just France, but also parts of Canada and a lot of Africa, where I now felt that those doors were open to me in terms of meeting people from those countries, listening to music from those countries, watching films from those countries, or possibly even in the future travelling to those countries. And at the end of 2019 I started training to be a teacher at Exeter University, which again is something that I wouldn't be doing if I didn't speak languages, because I trained to be a teacher of French and Spanish. There was actually someone at Exeter Uni doing the same course as I was, but that had also been on the French course, and she spoke German as her main language, her main foreign language. And she was interested in learning Spanish, I was interested in learning German, so since the PGCE we've been teaching each other those languages, so we do exchanges. And then at the very end of 2019 I started teaching while I was still studying, and I didn't go to work dressed like this every day, this was for European Day of Languages. And then in 2020 I was teaching French and Spanish while I was still studying to get my qualified teacher status, but I'd already learnt some basic German, so I was able to then start a German lunch club as well, which was awesome because we actually had at that school some exchange students, so there were some German students that came along, so I was able to create a space for that cultural exchange. And during this period I went back to Berlin with my wife. We'd actually been there before, but going a second time with me speaking some German, again it made life so much easier, and it was just so much more interesting because again I could understand the street art, and in Berlin the street art's big, there's stickers everywhere, there's lots of graffiti. On the Berlin Wall there's a huge stretch that you can walk along with graffiti, and most of the writing, most of the messages are in German, and it gave me that kind of depth of experience that I didn't have the first time. I was also able to visit some statues of some of my sociology idols, Marx and Engels. We actually went with my father-in-law and my sister-in-law, who are Colombian, speak Spanish. So there I was, the first time I was just there speaking English. The second time I was able to speak English, speak a little bit of German, speak Spanish with them, translate between them. We had to ask questions to someone in German, they'd answer in German, I could translate it into Spanish, which, A, it made me feel very useful, but B, it just makes the situation a lot easier pragmatically in terms of practicality, it makes travelling a lot easier if you speak the language. And then I qualified to be a teacher and started teaching French and Spanish at the school where I'm at the moment. So one of the things that people like to say, especially language teachers like myself, is that learning another language will help you to get a job. And for me personally, that's not why I did it. That's not why I'd do it if I were to do it again. There are lots of statistics out there that will tell you how much more you can earn if you speak another language, or how many linguists are needed in certain sectors of the economy and things like that. But I'm not going to touch upon that in this video. And here we are in the present in 2021. So where am I at the moment with my target languages? Well, I still use Duolingo pretty much every day, a really good free language learning app if you haven't come across it before. So I use that to practice my German, my French, my Portuguese. Once a week I do a language exchange with someone from Brazil. So we spend about 45 minutes speaking in Portuguese and then we switch into English. And that's a really good experience, and I've learned not just have I improved my Portuguese and feel a lot more, every week I feel more and more confident with it. I'm also learning so much more about Brazilian politics and culture and food and music. I also do a weekly exchange with another teacher, the same person that I met way back in the French course. So we still do our weekly exchange of German and Spanish. I'm also using an app that I hadn't discovered before and I wish I had, because it's so useful, an app called Tandem, where you can find native speakers or fluent speakers of the language you want to learn all around the world, and you can start chatting with them. And WhatsApp as well can be a really useful tool. I'm in a WhatsApp group, for example, with French vocabulary being shared every day. Compared to when I first started learning Spanish, there's so much technology that you can instantly access people all around the world, and there's so many ways to learn another language and to practice another language and to instantly reap the benefits of speaking the language, because you don't actually need to go to the country to meet people virtually from that country and to start experiencing what it's like to have those connections with people in another language. And I'm still using a lot of the same techniques that I discovered for myself way back when I started learning Spanish, like listening to music. So nowadays I've got quite a lot of Spotify playlists I've put together, and I kind of shuffle between all of them, listening to music in Spanish, in English, in French, in German, in Portuguese. And for me it's fantastic because it kind of feeds back into itself. I discover music because of a language, and then the love of that music makes me love the language more and motivates me in the language, and then learning words from the music and improving my listening skills from the music makes me feel more confident in the language, and then the more confident I am, the more music I understand. So it's this constant circle of just the more you learn, the more you experience, and the more you experience, the more you learn. Despite working full-time as a languages teacher, I tried to make time every week, even if it's just for 1 hour, to spend time studying my target languages. I want to at least maintain them, or even better, make progress in all of them. And actually, I started this video by talking about a journey of 1,000 miles begins with just one step. And when you first learn a language, you don't really know what a big journey it's going to be, but once you've done that journey once, it's nice that you know how long the journey is going to be, and you also know that it's not going to come overnight. It took me about 10 years to become fluent in Spanish, so when I've started learning other languages, I've got that perspective that I'm not in any real rush. I know it's going to be a long journey, but I also know how I can make that journey a bit easier. I know where I've encountered challenges in the past, and I know the tricks that work for me to help me remember words, to help me understand grammar, and to also make sure that I'm enjoying the experience so that I stay motivated. Because at the end of the day, for me, learning languages isn't about getting to that final destination of being fluent in the language. The process of getting from not speaking a single word to becoming fluent, the process itself is actually so rewarding and so interesting. Not to mention it's really good for your brain health, it's really good for helping you to improve in other subject areas if you're at school or if you're at university. It helps you to improve a lot of different cognitive functions and problem-solving skills. Another thing that I do is I watch a lot of Netflix. I've actually had to put together an Excel spreadsheet of all the different things, all the different documentaries and documentary series and films and series that I want to watch in all of my different target languages. There's just a wealth of stuff on Netflix in lots of different languages. There's actually a Google plugin you can use on Chrome as well, so that you can watch something on Netflix with subtitles in 2 languages simultaneously. So you could watch something in Spanish with Spanish and English subtitles, and you can pause it and you can re-listen to parts and you can write down the vocabulary. So it's a really, really good way to chill out and watch Netflix, but at the same time learn another language. So to summarise, if you remember that map with just the blue areas, just the places where people spoke English, nowadays I see the world, my kind of world map, more like this. So there's still a lot of great areas because there's a lot of languages in the world. By speaking Portuguese as well, I've added in another 234 million speakers, not just in Portugal, but in Brazil and in Mozambique, in Angola, parts of Africa, Cape Verde. And altogether, the people that I could communicate with, there's over 2.28 billion people, which is almost 30% of the global population. So while it's not realistic to learn every single language in the world, if you pick the languages that are very widely spoken, so apart from the ones that I've studied and that I'm learning at the moment, you know, things like Mandarin Chinese as well and Arabic, you can unlock so much more culture, so much music, so many people, so many travel destinations and so many work opportunities. So if you haven't done so already, you know, really seriously consider starting to learn another language. Where I've really reaped the benefits and where I've really felt value from learning other languages has been the 3 P's and the 3 C's. People, places, perspective. So by that I mean the people I've met and the places that I've been to, that's all very self-explanatory, but the perspective that it's given me as well to, not just perspective on my own country, my own language, but also perspective of the world. I see the world so much more differently than I did when I only saw it as an English speaker. Not just because I've learned so much more about different cultures and I've been able to engage with their media, not just our media portrayal of their countries, but also because actually we think in language, and the more languages you learn, the more different ways of thinking and the different ways of conceptualizing things you learn. So it really gives you a much broader perspective, or lots of different perspectives to look at something from. And then the 3 C's are connections with people, with places, culture, and community. It really is a beautiful community of people that learn languages. People called polyglots who speak lots of languages really are a worldwide community of people who are passionate about learning languages. So where do I think I'll go in the future? I think potentially in 2022 I might start learning Italian, which is a language that has a lot of things in common with French and with Spanish and with Portuguese, so it seems like the logical next step for me. And perhaps in the future I'd love to learn something that is kind of outside of that family of languages, something like Arabic or something like Mandarin or Japanese or Russian or Greek. But for now, I'm just taking my time and I'd like to perfect the languages that I'm learning, and I think that could take another 10 years. Before you go, I'm just going to quickly explain how to make the most of using Spanish with James. If you head over to the main channel, you'll find on the landing page that there are lots of different sections. There's a section for beginner Spanish with all of the beginners level videos, there's one for intermediate Spanish, advanced Spanish, and there's one for poetry as well. So it's all nicely organised so that you can find the videos that are right for you at where you're at on your Spanish journey. And again, if you haven't already done so, it'd mean a lot if you just very gently click that subscribe button. And that brings us to the end of the video. Muchísimas gracias por ver este video y espero que te vaya muy bien con el español.